There are breeds of dog that live and die in almost complete obscurity. Beloved companions, working animals, footnotes in the long history of humanity's relationship with the canine. And then, there are breeds whose entire existence was shaped by geopolitical ambition, extreme survival, and ultimately by an international treaty that rendered them obsolete. The Argentine Polar Dog, Perro Polar Argentino, belongs firmly in that second category. Its story is one of extraordinary purpose, remarkable capability, and a quiet, almost bureaucratic extinction. To understand the Argentine Polar Dog, you first need to understand Argentina's relationship with Antarctica. The origins of the breed can be traced back to 1949, when Colonel Hernán Pujato approached President Juan Perón with a proposal to bring Argentina closer to its Antarctic territorial claims. By establishing the Instituto Antártico Argentino and other science-oriented bases with year-round populations. This was no small ambition. Antarctica is one of the most hostile environments on Earth. A continent of perpetual cold, blinding blizzards, and terrain that has defeated better-equipped expeditions than Argentina's. Perón approved the plan, and Pujato set about learning everything he could about polar survival. Perón's interest led to Pujato visiting North America and taking a polar survival course required by the United States Army in both Alaskan and Greenlandic territories, where he learned about efficient methods of survival, construction, and transportation. On that trip, he gathered 40 dogs, which he brought back with him to Antarctica. These 40 dogs, drawn from the great working breeds of the frozen north, would become the genetic foundation for something entirely new. The breed was a cross between a Spitz, which were traditionally used as sled dogs, and several other breeds, including the Alaskan Malamute, the Siberian Husky, the Greenland Dog, and the Samoyed. In the 1950s, a team of more than 30 non-commissioned officers began a selective breeding effort. They needed a dog that could lift heavy weights, travel long distances, and breed easily. The Argentine Polar Dog met every one of those requirements. On March 21, 1951, the San Martin base was established as the first Argentine base below the Antarctic Circle, and the Argentine Polar Dog became a key piece in the logistics of the Argentinian presence on the continent. A well-built animal, it stood at 50 to 60 centimeters tall. Males reached a weight of roughly 60 kilograms, while females remained at around 50 kilograms. Their heads resembled those of Malamutes, with small and straight ears, with dark brows over light blue eyes. The coat was thick and double-layered, built to withstand Antarctic temperatures, and those temperatures could be severe. During Lieutenant Gustavo Giro's 1962 terrestrial crossing, temperatures dropped to minus 42 degrees Celsius, and winds were over 200 kilometers per hour. These dogs not only survived such conditions, they worked and thrived in them. The Argentine Polar Dog was, above all else, a working animal. Teams typically consisted of 8 dogs per sledge, capable of covering 30 to 35 kilometers per day during favorable 10-hour journeys. It took 11 Argentine Polar Dogs to drag a sled weighing over a ton, and on flat terrain they could move at 22 miles per hour, 35 kilometers per hour. But raw power was only part of what made these dogs invaluable. Explorers and personnel who worked side by side with the dogs reported that the animals had an innate sense that allowed them to detect obstacles invisible to the human eye, cracks and holes in the ground covered by thin ice or frost. Without being commanded, the dogs would stray from the planned path to avoid any unseen obstacles and return once it was safe. In an environment where a single misstep could mean falling into a crevasse, this ability was not a convenience. It was life-saving. A near-fatal incident in 1956 near Bahia Dulce at Base Esperanza saw a sledge fall below the ice, resulting in the tragic loss of 3 dogs, including the lead guide, but no human casualties due to the team's swift response aided by the remaining dogs. The dogs were also central to some of Argentina's most ambitious and impressive Antarctic work. Notably, in 1952, an expedition spanning 2,000 kilometers between Bases Esperanza and General San Martin utilized two sledges, each drawn by 8 Argentine polar dogs, to connect important coastal areas and establish logistical chains. And in 1962, these dogs powered advance and main groups over more than 2,000 kilometers, including an 800-kilometer straight-line segment in 133 days, with individual dogs like Poncho covering over 1,000 kilometers while navigating crevasses more efficiently than tractors. Poncho became something of a legend. He also contributed to the 1965 Operación 90, Argentina's inaugural overland push toward the South Pole, where dogs traversed fractured ice shelves at -41 degrees Celsius, hauling shelters and alerting of hazards to support scientific and territorial assertions. A wide spectrum of temperaments was reported within the breed. While some individuals showed great tolerance and compassion towards each other, others were prone to fighting and aggression. Generally, Argentine polar dogs were loyal and tender to their human masters, but more aggressive around other dogs. Fights between Argentine polar dogs were reported to be particularly violent, usually culminating in the death or severe injury of one or both dogs involved. Dogs were trained to obey their master's voice rather than a whip or a similar striking object. The most intelligent dog in each pack would be appointed to take the lead after each command. Behind this individual, dogs would be paired in yokes, called first yoke, second yoke, third yoke, and stem yoke, and the sleds were pulled by an uneven number of dogs, totaling 7, 9, or 13, depending on the freight. Feeding these animals in Antarctica was itself a logistical challenge. The primary food was pemmican, a concentrated, dried, and hypercaloric food that accounted for 5,000 calories per serving. Over time, pemmican began to be supplemented by seal meat, which was greatly enjoyed by the dogs and provided extra calories. Nonetheless, the meat was never meant to replace pemmican, and some dogs became sluggish if their feed was even a quarter seal meat in relation. To communicate, the Argentine polar dog mostly used a prolonged and high-pitched howl that reached great distances. One dog would usually howl once, to which its companions would respond in a chorus, howling in return and stopping all at once with a remarkable sense of timing. For over 4 decades, the Argentine polar dog served faithfully in one of the most inhospitable places on Earth. But its end came not through failure or disease, it came through environmental law. The practice of breeding Argentine polar dogs came to an end in 1991, when Article 4 of the Antarctic Treaty forced the removal of all non-native species from the continent. The concern was straightforward. Dogs posed a potential threat to Antarctic wildlife, particularly seals, and the principle of protecting the continent's native ecosystem took precedence. Their role had already begun to diminish with advancing technology, and evacuations began, including 22 dogs from Base San Martin in 1991. After they were removed from the continent, the remaining animals died out, having lost the ability to fight off common canine diseases due to their long isolation in Antarctica. By 1994, the breed, sadly, was gone entirely. The Argentine polar dog existed for barely 40 years, a blink in the long history of human-dog partnership. Yet in that time, it helped a nation plant its flag on the most remote continent on Earth, saved the lives of explorers who would otherwise have vanished into crevasses, and endured conditions that would break almost any other living creature. It was engineered for a single specific purpose, and it fulfilled that purpose with distinction. Its extinction was not a failure of the breed, but a consequence of a changing world's relationship with its last wild frontier. In the annals of working dogs, few have served so capably in so extreme a place for such high stakes. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe and suggest any ideas for future videos on your favorite dogs. See you soon!